What's up, friends? It's Carpo here. It's just a beautiful day out here. I know I always have to say that whenever I make a video on a beautiful day, but it really is gorgeous. I try to use those beautiful days as inspiration. And each year around this time I make a video pertaining to the spring and how it's renewal. And I think it takes until spring comes for me to realize how much I've been dragging my feet over the past 6 months. And the reason I find this important to share is because I know a lot of you out there have similar issues. And what I mean by issues, I guess, is lacking the motivation to get the things done we know we should get done doesn't necessarily mean we're lazy. We could be totally involved in our other projects all throughout the days. But when winter comes, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, there are a lot of dark, rainy days. Now, my situation is unique to me, and each of you will have your own circumstances. But my situation was as a stay-at-home father who works from home and lives at home all the time. I barely ever leave, and I have accumulated years of cabin fever, so to speak. During that time, I've made a lot of YouTube videos. Naturally, when you're at home, and you have time, and you've got thoughts on your mind, and you're processing ideas, it's nice to share. But it's not just because I am at home that I make videos. Of course, when I go out and about, I just love making videos for YouTube, especially when I'm camping or out in nature. And I'd actually prefer to make more outdoor videos. But it's either cold or windy, rainy, and I end up back in my office there. And so to try to stay on track here, I'm trying to inspire people to have the faith within themselves to realize that it's okay to beat ourselves up, first off. It's okay to say, damn it, I could have done better. Because if nothing else, that's going to help us want to be better people. We're going to want to be greater. Now, this always brings up a point that I have to get across, which is discussing being better people, greater people. I've discussed this with others and said, what do you think about there being better people in the world? And I sometimes will get the response of, well, no, everyone's equal. And there was a time when I believed everyone was equal, everyone had equal potential, and everyone deserved to be treated the same, regardless of, their circumstance. I've since then changed my tune on this to a degree. I believe everybody deserves the same amount of respect up front. But the minute they've shown themselves to be a bag of shit, then they deserve to be treated as such, because nobody's ever going to change if they're continuing to abuse their privilege of being a human by abusing other people. So there are certain limits to what we can say. Well, in other words, to wrap that up, if I say, are there better people? And I've heard people say no. And I would say, well, are there worse people? And often the answer to that one is yes. There are horrible people on this planet. There are people who would do nefarious things and just about anything to, take advantage of others for the sake of their own reasoning, regardless of why, regardless of their upbringing, childhood trauma, abuse, whatever may have led a person to that. It doesn't negate the fact that they act a certain way towards others. So I believe that we can be greater, and in that sense, we have every right to say that we are better people than others who commit horrendous acts. And because of that, of course, this is all subjective. This is my opinion. But it's my opinion that if I go out and help others, raise my children properly, and I'm patient with people, and I'm kind to others, then I am a better human being than someone who goes out and robs and steals and cheats and lies to everyone. And that's just how I feel in my heart, that I'm a better human, better at being a human. And that may strike, some people the wrong way, but I think most would agree with that. One could get into the semantics of what that means and the subjective idea of, well, what is a human? What is a human being? And do as thou wilt, and start bringing up crap like Aleister Crowley. He had a garbage philosophy, in my opinion. A lot of these people did. They came up with these ideas of, do as thou wilt, and, make your own law kind of mentality. But we forget that society as a whole, we have to live together. And so I guess what I'm saying is that we as a society determine what is of value. Now, an individual can set his own values, but if that doesn't reflect the whole, then he'll live a lonely life of finding value in something that others may find is maybe not only just not valuable, but almost harmful. So, to stay on track here, it all comes down to, and the point of this video is that we compare ourselves to others. And when we do that, in that process, we only see the self that others, I should say, we only reveal the self that we want others to see quite often. And therefore, we have to realize that the selves we see in others aren't necessarily their true selves. We can never perceive ourselves wholly and know really who we are. We can never completely see the pie. I've always pictured it as a jewel, and every comparison to humanity or to the personal connection to the universe is that we're all standing on a giant jewel with billions of facets. Each one of those facets is just a little piece. From your facet, you can see other facets, you can see where other people are standing, but no matter where you walk on that jewel, you'll never be able to see the whole. You will never be able to comprehend everything at once. So therefore, we come up with these little pockets of ideas about what it means to be a good human, what we should be doing with our lives. And amongst all this, we've kind of created a social expectation of what we should be doing. And so the average man or woman is expected to go to school, get an education, perhaps go to college, get a job, work that job, and maybe 50 years ago, this was the standard blue-collar type attitude, you know, work, retire, and get your retirement. Back then, maybe a person might have one or two jobs in their lifetime. Today, the average kid, they say, well, that's born today, the average millennial-aged person will have 10 to 12 different jobs in their lifetime. I mean, basically, we're kind of stuck with this idea of what it means to be a member of society, and then the reality of what we're finding, the reality of where we're going as a society. And so we beat ourselves up because we are not fitting the status quo, because we're not doing what we think we should be doing. If you're an intelligent person and you know you can make a lot of money, but you don't want to be rich, but you have a family to support, then you think, well, shouldn't it be my obligation to make as much money as possible to feed my family? And sometimes maybe, but that also, not if it comes at the cost of and a sacrifice of your time with your family and children. For example, people who work in, do a lot of traveling for business, and they feel great. They're making a couple $100,000 a year. They're sending money home to their family, but they're only seeing their kids maybe once a month. And to me, what's the point in raising children if we're not really interacting with them? But that's my particular opinion. I also see that things have changed. What we think raising kids has changed. You know, we made a lot of failures and mistakes by letting our kids get away with too much crap. And especially with my generation, which was kind of on the cusp, as a Gen Xer, which I'd like to put this out there before I forget it, because my wife showed me this clip from a video from this. He's a YouTuber. He does videos just like me in front of the camera. His name is Beau of the Fifth Column. His real name's Justin, but he does these videos, and it's called, they're basically entitled, Let's Talk About Gun Control, Let's Talk About Politics, Let's Talk About whatever, and he just sits and talks to the camera like I do. So this was one part of his video where he said, he said, we're the ones that are fucking up. He says, us, the Gen Xers, and he says, he says, to be specific, he says, I'm talking about the rat tail having, jean jacket wearing, duster and Scotchgard huffing generation. And my wife's like, you got to hear this because it just reminds me of you. That was my generation, all right? We had the jean jackets, the cut-up pants. I had a rat tail. I had a mullet. I huffed Scotchgard, butane, and I went out and did things that the kids of my generation did. But it's not a generational thing, because I don't believe in that whole millennial, Gen X, baby boomer. There are a lot of they're just dates. It means nothing. You may identify more with millennials than you do with your own Gen X group, or if you're a baby boomer, you may have a hippie mentality where you relate more to a past or a present generation than you do to your own. So when we talk about generations, we're really just talking about groupthink. This is how I kind of see it. When people say, well, my generation didn't do this or did do this, what we're really saying is that this is what happened during my time of growing up, and this is what I consider comfortable. And this comes to the kind of conservative mindset. And I'm not talking political here. I'm talking the true conservative mindset of just keep things as they are. I don't want things to change. And no matter how kind of liberal-minded a person is, as you get older, you will want stability, and you'll still be able to embrace change if that's the kind of person you are, which I am. I love change. I mean, if the world is changed tomorrow and there's an apocalypse, whatever may happen, it doesn't matter. I'm just like, bring it on. I've got a life to live, and I'm going to enjoy it as best I can. So, with all the potential and possibilities in life, why do we get so down on ourselves? We do it because of our expectations. And when you let go of expectations, it can go a couple ways. It's kind of like I've said, I've learned to let go of stress to an extent. This has a benefit and drawback. The benefit, of course, is that I'm not stressed about stupid things. The drawback is that if you let that go too far, you might stop stressing about things that are actually important. Paying your bills, taking care of your health, addictions, different issues. So you got to keep on top of your own shit. So you got to be constantly aware of, where you're going and where you want to go. But be open to change during that time. Stagnance breeds psychosis. If a person stagnates too long in their mind, then they will become, I should say, neuroticism. Neuroticism is a byproduct of us thinking too much, or sometimes thinking too little. But often our circumstances, we can be triggered by something in our environment which sets our brain into a frenzy. I've dealt personally, firsthand, with people with psychosis and with delusions, and for a long period of time. And it was... I've learned a lot about how the human mind processes and thinks what it wants to believe and creates that reality. And if nobody's around to tell you any different, and nobody's around to help you with cognitive behavioral therapy and understanding yourself, then you might just fall into your delusions, and you might suffer more because of it. And in that case, a person may either beat themselves up, but they're more because there's a lot of depreciation and self-loathing and hatred that comes with certain delusional disorders. But the opposite can also happen. Delusions of grandeur. And so instead of a person being critical of themselves and for healthy reasons, saying, well, I need to change this, a person thinks whatever they do, whatever they touch turns to gold. It's the King Midas syndrome. And it's a real thing, Delusions of grandeur makes a person think that anything they do is divine and it was meant to be. And so I guess I brought that up just to kind of compare the other end of it, how far it can go. We can go into an extreme, and that's so far beyond arrogance or narcissism. That's an actual disorder of thinking. But you could say so is narcissism. Any type of thinking where we truly believe something, whether it's right or wrong, maybe they're all delusions, but we truly believe a lot of the things that we say. And then there's other things that we say that we know are complete bullshit. Like, that everything is great and dandy and everyone is equal and everything's, going to be perfect and there's a utopian future. That really comes down to perception and alchemy of attitudes. And speaking of that, I spent about an hour this morning. I was flipping through my book of Manly Hall. Manly Hall was one of the greatest teachers of this type of wisdom that I've ever come across. And I had a lot of stuff uploaded, but I deleted it about a year ago when this whole YouTube thing with censorship came up. I didn't want to get copyright strikes for using his material, but I have a bunch of notes I wrote down. I mean, I listened to hundreds of hours of his lectures, and I have notes at very specific times in timestamps within them, within these particular lectures. And so I went back and listened to those timestamps and recorded them. And what I'm going to do is make a little compilation of these tidbits of wisdom that I've gained from him and put them into a video and share them with you. Manly Hall can have really long, boring, drawn-out, 2-hour lectures that are you could barely hear because the sound quality was so bad. They were all done in the '60s, '70s. But if you can get past the sound quality and the droning voice of some of his older years, he has a lot to teach. And unfortunately, a lot of folks, they instantly think, especially extreme Christians who don't really know any better and haven't done any real research, they just say Manly P. Hall was a Satanist. And those people need a metaphoric bitch slap because it's the stupidest thing to say. The first one I clicked on this morning was talking about God and the divine and being connected and loving one another and understanding one another. It's just that it's too deep for some people because it gets into the inner workings of the mind. And what I've found is that people don't want to go there. I found this through psychedelics. When I was in my teen years, I took a lot of LSD and mushrooms. And during that time, I learned a lot about myself and didn't even realize how much wisdom I was gaining. Well, I had friends who were interested in psychedelics. Then I have other friends who tried it once or twice and never went back. And they said they had an amazing mystical experience. They could see everything about themselves, yet they don't want to go back there. And it took me a couple decades of pondering to really understand this. People don't want to see their true selves. And they don't want to be confronted with all their shortcomings. And that's exactly what psychedelics do. I should say that's what LSD does. It allows you to see yourself as connected to the universe, yet a responsible party within it. You can't just cop out and do whatever you want. At least, if you're listening. It's not the drug. It's what it allows your brain to do. The connection between these areas that don't usually communicate. And this is because of millions of years of evolution, which pushed those ideas to the back of the brain so we could survive now. And right now, finally, for just the past couple hundred years, we've had the opportunity to be comfortable and to not have to work as hard and to be able to survive and have a home and food and eating like kings of hundreds of years ago. I mean, we, at least in the Western world, we're pretty damn well off considering how we were in the past. It could be better, of course, but I'm just saying the average person doesn't have to fret as much as we did in the past. And this breeds neuroticism. This breeds psychosis because when we don't have enough confronting us and challenging us, when we don't have enough work to do, then we start thinking. And when we start thinking, it can go one of two ways. Either we could say, I'm going to discover the truth about myself and my world as best I can, and I'm going to process it and share it with the world, or I'm going to completely shut down from that. I'm going to choose not to improve upon myself because it's too painful, it's too much work, and they just ignore their faults and follies, and they go on being complete morons in this world. Or jerks, or abusers. I mean, there's nothing worse than a deadbeat dad, or an abusive husband, or an abusive wife. Or parents who beat up on their children, or children who beat up on their parents. There's a lot of violence, and that's just the physical attributes. We have people who are out there mentally beating each other down, and people who feel threatened by their friends or spouses who may be doing well because people see themselves and they compare them to others and they say, oh, I want to do well too. So it comes down to a self-honesty. No more bullshit, with ourselves. All of us deserve better. At least most of us deserve to treat ourselves better when it comes to these things. We're not gods. We're not the be-all, end-all of the universe. We are not on the top of the food chain as much as we might like to think we are. And we should humble ourselves to this existence. And by doing that, take it less seriously. And it's my belief that religion has done exactly that. It's taken things too seriously. It's made things too serious. Everything you do is too crucial to the afterlife in this world. So instead of focusing on making it better for everyone, it becomes a selfish notion to make sure you get to heaven and the ones you loved get to heaven. Even if it's just people in general, those who are out preaching to others. It's a matter of people being unsure about their purpose, so creating one, but in the meantime missing the moment. And when we miss the moment, we miss everything. But if we get too wrapped up in the moment and all we do is live in the now, then we know where that leads to. We never get anything done, we don't accomplish our tasks or goals, and sometimes that can cause a lot of turmoil in our lives. And so, anyhow, to wrap this up, that's kind of what I've done. and in a way, I've allowed some of my past follies to just be ignored. Some of my, perhaps, I have various financial issues to attend to. But over the years, I have made a lot of changes. And that's the thing, and that's the message I want to really leave with you all, is that we've all made mistakes. We've all screwed up. We've all treated ourselves like crap in the past. I've had addictions that I can't even fathom that I let myself get so deep into something, because the brain was so tricked, that I thought I was doing okay. And this is not just drugs, but behaviors, attitudes. And so, looking back, I've quit some addictions. I stopped eating junk food all the time at night. I used to be a chocolate milk fanatic. I stopped drinking it. It's something as simple as that, just to try to improve my health, to try to improve my well-being. But no matter how much we work to improve ourselves, there's always that nagging feeling of insecurity and not being sure, about which path we're taking. That's one of the hardest ones. If we don't take somebody else's example of what the past means and what we should be doing, then we end up confused and wondering what we should be doing. And that's what I've been through this so many times. Should I be working towards writing books? Should I spend years on one project that I might not turn into anything? Or should I just go out and get a 9-to-5 job and just work behind the counter somewhere? Whatever it takes, I'm not sure where I fit in this world. The only thing I know for sure is that I like making YouTube videos, so maybe I can make that a career one day. We'll see. But a lot of people point at that and they'll say, oh God, get a real job. YouTubing isn't a job. And I thought about that a lot. I thought, what is a real job? What is it that we're all trying to accomplish that is so important? And when you really look at the absurdity of it all, you can look and laugh at the human race as a whole, us included. And when you see the humor in it all, then you can share that with others. And that is the most comforting feeling, is being in a group of people who can all laugh at the absurdity of life instead of being in complete competition. I watched a show last night about on Netflix called Losers. And it was just a little series of people who had lost, who had tried really hard and then lost at their sport, and then maybe rebounded or whatever. But all of the people had this attitude of when they lost, they felt like they were worthless. I mean, they associated winning a game with their value in life. And that's the thing. Each one of us has this. It may not be a sport, and we may not end up on a documentary, but all of us face these same hero's journey and the challenges, and we have to see ourselves for what it is. Don't worry about taking a loss. If you've wasted a lot of time on one thing or not doing one thing you should be doing, it's okay to just set that aside and move forward. And that's what living in the now really is. It's not about ignoring the past or the future. It's like I say, it's about using the past to learn now to improve our future. So, be well, my friends. I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks for listening, and hope you all have a fantastic day. Don't beat yourself up. And you're not a horrible person. You're not the greatest person. You're just a person. We all are. We're all in this together, one way or another. Take care.